Hello and welcome to NBS People and Power, where we get to listen to inspirational stories. And today I have someone who we have quite a bit in common, but we'll be getting to know what exactly we have in common. He is a podcaster, he's a communications expert, he is an aspiring farmer. And I kept asking, why do you say aspiring? We will also get to know why he says that. But he spun through a number of industries and will be drinking from his cup of knowledge on people and power. And that is none other than Sunny Nyombia right here with me. It's a pleasure having you, Sunny. How are you?
Thank you so much, Mildred. I have no idea why you've chosen me.
There is always a story for everyone on People and Power here.
Hey, I'm here. Let's talk.
For many of you, probably you've paid attention to Sammy on the long form podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe for the viewers who have not watched the long form podcast, you could just take them through that because there is a lot of podcasting now.
Yes. So the long form podcast is a weekly show that I do that's about really just speaking to interesting people. Very often, you work in television, right? So in television, it's about speed. 40-minute segments cut into 15-minute segments. Here, I speak until the cows come home.
Free flow.
Yes, and I speak to just interesting people. So one day I'll be speaking to economist. The next day I'm speaking to a politician. The next day I'm speaking to a farmer. The next week I'm speaking to a mental health expert. Next week I will be speaking to a politician. The whole point of it is to just learn from people who've done things or with people who do stories, kind of like what you've been doing here.
Yeah, very true. And I get to learn a lot from people's stories. And when you were talking about speaking for as long as you can be able to have the time, what came to my mind is the attention span now, especially with the advent of digital media and everything, that the attention span of people is really, really very minimal. How do you manage to keep audiences locked? Because that's one communication.
I think you're right. With podcasting, and what makes podcasting special is that it allows the listener or the viewer to pick and choose how much content they're consuming. So someone will very often say, I have a conversation that's maybe 2 hours long. People will not watch it. Very few will actually watch or hear it at a go.
2 hours through.
But then what they'll do is they'll get into their car between home and work. They'll listen to maybe 30 minutes. Then they'll pause. Then they'll go, do whatever they're going to do. Then maybe they'll head back home for lunch. They'll continue the conversation. And then they'll consume that content over 3-4 days. Because it's about giving people a choice. But then I also have to understand that I have to keep things engaging.
You're right.
Right? Yeah. So I have to choose the right guest. Then on top of that, I have to make things interesting. Because, if you don't, you lose people.
Even you yourself as an interviewer depends. You really need to engage your guests to keep that conversation moving. But we'll, of course, be doing bits and pieces about yourself. Like I said on People and Power, it's the stories. It's getting people from where we do not know to who we see right now. As Sunny, where did your story begin? How did it all start?
Well, it depends on which story it is, right? So if it's
Sunny, the young man now.
I'm not so young anymore. My story begins in 1980. In a Uganda that is just coming from the war to oust Idi Amin. So
the protracted guerrilla war.
No. To oust Idi Amin, because remember, it's 1980. So Museveni is just coming into the military. I think it was the military commission. There was a lot going on. So that's young Sunny is born to a Rwandan refugee father and a young Mutoro woman.
Okay.
And I'm born in a small hospital. I'm one of the very few Ugandans or refugees at the time who were born in a hospital in a town called Mityana in Mubende. So when you see my passport, it's born Mityana Mubende 1980.
Because right now when you say Mityana, someone thinks about the district that it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that time it was part of the district of Mubende.
Yeah, sure. The Greater Mubende.
So yeah, that's I guess that's the story.
Grew up here or had
Yes.
to have some...
Listen, the refugee experience in the early 80s was it was challenging.
Yeah.
So I was between different places. So sometimes I'd be living with my mom. And at that time, my father was not very available. He was in different things. So I'd jump from my mom to my grandparents. My grandparents lived in refugee camps. So I was in between a refugee camp called Nyachival in Ankole region. And then sometimes later on, because there were issues around security, there was the war now, this is the Museveni war, we moved from Nyachival and then we were moved to another one in Toro called Chaka. So there was Chaka 1, Chaka 2.
Chaka 2.
So I was in Chaka 2. So I was in between there. Eventually, I think the war becomes much too dangerous for a young child. My father was sent into exile by the Minister of Security at the time, Chris Rakasisi. He was given 24 hours and told
24.
never to step into Uganda ever again. That's around 1983.
Why? He was a refugee. Was he into politics or something like that?
Yes. So at the time, that was, for those who understand the Rwandan refugee politics, that was the beginning of what exists today, that the RPF.
Yes.
So there was an organization called the Rwanda Alliance for National Unity. So RANU then becomes the RPF. But so my father was part of that, trying to create a movement to get the refugees back home. He was caught and for those activities, and he was told to leave the country because, again, remember that during the time, a lot of Rwandan refugees were part of the NRA.
Yes.
So President Paul Kagame at that time, he was just a major. You had Fred Wijema. We had actually thousands of Rwandans. So when Rakasisi caught my dad, he said, this guy is probably part of that group, and you need to leave. So he leaves, he runs off to Kenya and then Canada. I leave around 1983, 84, and head to...
So you first stayed back with mom and then
a little
went
bit,
and joined mom in
yes, and then
in Canada.
Yes, and because my mom, of course, I was her first son, her firstborn, and it must have been extremely difficult for her to let her son go because she did not know what would happen with me. But she did. I think she made a decision and said, life here will be very difficult for this young boy. There is war. You don't know how long the war is going to last. It's not safe. So she made a tough decision and said, go to your dad. And so from Nairobi, we headed to Canada in 1986.
So actually from your earlier, years to mid time of your life, you were in Canada. Tell us about the experience there, because I want to believe that you got to understand that you also lived in a refugee settlement while you were in Uganda. And once again, then your dad also becomes double refugee, if I would say, for lack of a better word. What was life like in Canada? Well,
again, Canada in the 80s was not the Canada that exists today. It was extremely welcoming. The government, as soon as I got there, I got the papers. I think a year after I became a Canadian citizen. It was a very welcoming place. Obviously, you're coming to a place where you're the only black person, right? So Toronto, there weren't Africans like that. And then we moved to a smaller town called Guelph. To be honest, I never saw black people. You had maybe one or two in your class, and they're always from the Caribbean.
Weren't you like a center of attraction in your community?
You could say that. I wouldn't call myself a center of attraction. I think because when you're a kid, you quickly learn to speak like them.
Yeah. True.
Right. So remember, I'm 6 years old at this time. So I quickly learned how to speak with an accent. I quickly learned to play baseball and ice skate, and you quickly become a Canadian kid.
You blended in.
You blend in, and as much as you can. Of course, you have instances where teachers think you are not as intelligent.
Oh yeah.
But again, it is what it is.
You let it pass.
Yeah. Oh well, I didn't let it pass. I did not know that. You know, when you're a kid,
you
people
don't,
who are racist to you don't think they're being racist.
Oh yeah,
You
sure.
just.
And after you're a kid as well, sometimes you never get
don't
to
know.
understand.
You know, so maybe my dad would notice things, right? And you'd see. My mom kept some of my report cards, and you'd see the comments that would be made. And now that I read them, this is racist.
I know. Now that you're mature, you understand what they were.
Yes, but at the time, I did not know it.
How long did you live in Canada?
I think from 86 to 93. I become a bit of a teenager, and I was slightly problematic. And I mean, this was the beginning of hip hop, right? So you're
I'm bracing myself for some.
No. It's the beginning of hip hop, yes. and you're thinking, you know, you're a young boy. You
can make it in that line.
No. I'm not a hip hopper. No. It was an attitude, right? So you'd want to do the things you saw on TV. You know,
things
get up.
Like?
No, just getting up to no good and spending nights out, and you should be at home, but you're out, quote unquote, in the streets. But yeah, and my dad, I think, took a decision and said it might make more sense to send this kid back to Africa, because if he continues along this line, a white society might not see him as just a young boy. They might see him through that criminal lens.
Oh yeah.
So he just sent me back to Uganda.
Did you at that time? You came back to mom?
No.
Or
Unfortunately, my mother passed away. I never got to see her. After
from the time you left joining dad in Canada.
Yeah, I never got to see her. Oops. So she passed away in 1990.
So you were returning to who in Uganda? So
remember that while my father was in exile, he also still had my grandparents were still in.
Oh yeah.
Were in the Nyachival camp. My uncles and aunties were in Jinja and Kampala, and some of them were in Busia, some of them were in Ankole. We were still here. The family was still here, so I was coming back to my aunts and uncles. Ended up in Jinja. I was put in a secondary school, a boarding school.
Now I can imagine you coming back with your accent.
Yes.
Having grown elsewhere, and you're coming back to Jinja.
No, so I mean, to be honest, I found it fascinating. It was so where we lived was a place called Njeru. So it's not Jinja.
It's almost on the border, closer to Buik, where there is
exactly.
Jinja.
And I remember we lived in this house, and all my cousins were there, and my uncles. I had never lived with a community, so many people, and we had a garden in the back that had cassava, and I'd never seen cassava in my life. And there was sugarcane, and in front of it there was matoke and a papaya tree, and it had a compound. I thought we were rich. Now when I think back to it, it
was the basic thing.
It was the basic, but it was fascinating. Other than the fact that I had never bathed, I had never bathed with cold water.
The things kids go through and remember.
So I remember it was a fight getting me to bathe.
You needed to have a timetable.
No, because they had to force me. Because I didn't understand. Why is this water cold?
Why
is this water?
Don't you have a heater around?
Why make it make sense? Why am I bathing
cold water?
Cold water in a jerry can, or why
or
is
in a bucket or basin?
In a bucket? Why?
You were used to a shower.
Yes.
Oh, poor you.
But you know, when you're a kid, at the time, I think I was 12, turning 13. Again, you go with the flow, especially when you see everyone else doing the same.
Yeah.
right? But yeah, so I thought Jinja was fascinating. Where we were, you could literally see the railway bridge over the Nile. So it was fascinating, and I
Sunny, I
loved
will
it.
hold you just a little bit because yours is a very interesting story, and I can imagine. I thought it was just that boys thing of you just don't want to shower, but for you, the water is cold. I'm
It was
showering in a jerry
I
can.
don't understand.
We need to take a very short commercial break. When we do return, Sunny's story is a very interesting one with lots of twists and turns, but allow us to take a very short commercial break. When we do return, we continue with this one.